Donald Trump wants the Gulf to pay for this war. The Speaker of the White House, Caroline Leavitt, was asked directly by a journalist, should the Gulf countries fund this war like they did in 1991? And the response, she laughed and she called it a great idea. And the remarkable part is because this is the same war the Gulf warned against, the same war your advisors warned against, the same war that already hit their infrastructure, their factories, and their energy systems, and by the way, the same war that caused you numerous losses, Mr. Trump. And now they are expected to pay for it. Let's talk with numbers. The war is costing about $1 billion a day, $1.5 billion. That's if there is something we don't know about. So best count in 30 days would be at least $30 billion. The Pentagon already asked the US Congress for another $200 billion. And that's before you count the destroyed aircrafts and injured soldiers and their strategic losses that never get announced in public. And I am sure one way or another, Israel will ask Trump or the rest of the world to rebuild it again. Let me guess, the rebuilding process was promised you 3,000 years ago, huh? So those guys in Israel, they suffered insane losses, their anti-air systems depleted, and numerous losses in South Lebanon, and death tolls are probably in hundreds, if not thousands. But you know, cover-ups. So when they say pay, this isn't support, this is cost transfer. And the part that nobody discusses in most cases is there used to be something called international law. I don't know if you remember it or not. On paper, the aggressor pays the compensation, not the country that gets hit. So if you apply that rule, the United States and Israel should be paying the Gulf and Iran, and in reality, anyone who got affected by this war. So that's, they need to pay compensation for Indonesia, Europe, Thailand, Philippines, any country that reached a critical or at least got affected even the slightest by this war. So, but in reality, the rules don't apply equally. They apply only when it's convenient. And if you are asking what the real objective is, Donald Trump already answered that, but not now. In 1987, in a public interview posted on his own Truth Social, he said, take the oil, control it, stay in Kharj Island, never leave. And that was his plan. So when you hear security or stability, just remember, this didn't start with a war. The war just made it visible. Take out Venezuela and Iran, lay siege on China by controlling the oil and trade routes, that's what he hoped for. But the situation is much worse. And back to another update on Cuba, on the story that I gave you a few days ago. 3 months ago, with no consistent oil supply, 3 months of near total darkness, hospitals operating at minimum capacity, surgeries delayed, entire neighborhoods without electricity. Yesterday, one oil tanker finally arrived from Russia, 730,000 barrels. It sounds like a solution, but it's not. Cuba needs around 100,000 barrels per day. That tanker covers maybe 10 to 15 days at best use. Then it's gone. But it doesn't even start immediately. The oil has to be transported from the port to the refineries in Havana. That alone takes 5 to 7 days. The refining process takes another 20 days because the infrastructure is old and strained. So even when oil arrives, the crisis doesn't end. It just pauses, maybe just 10 to 15 days. And Trump's response, he says Cuba is finished. Whether they get oil or not, it doesn't matter. Wow, it doesn't matter. That's 10 million people you're talking about with no electricity or stable healthcare or any supply of life, of basic life, and the response is, it doesn't matter. So this is the system right now. A war escalates, costs rise, and instead of absorbing them, they get pushed outward, to the Gulf, to weaker economies, to anyone who can push back. And that's the real story. This isn't about winning, it's about who pays. If the Gulf refuses, then what happens next? We might get a clearer answer today when Donald Trump gives his speech later on today. But let me know your thoughts in the comments.